this lecture, we are going to talk about how consumers can be tracked by firms. And because of that consumer tracking, how targeting of consumers for advertising becomes possible. Okay. We are also going to talk about the advertising campaigns based on display advertising. So as opposed to search advertising that we have already discussed, it is also possible to set up display advertising campaigns where not search ads, but banner ads on different websites can be shown by an advertiser, right? We will also talk about the programmatic aspect of display advertising. And this simply means that it is possible to actually purchase display ads on the fly based on the type of consumer that you are interested in targeting, right? We are also going to start introducing the Google tools which are used by advertisers to set up their advertising campaigns, right? So to that end, we will introduce the Google tools, Google tool which is called Google Ads to you today. We will also touch upon briefly on the Google AdSense tool, which is not used by the advertisers, but it is used by publishers to make ad space available on their sites, which can then be purchased by advertisers. So in our course, the focus will be on the advertiser side, and therefore we'll be talking a lot more in detail about the Google Ads tool than the Google AdSense tool. Okay, so with that in mind, let's start. So let's first talk about the consumer targeting aspect of, especially in the context of display ads. Okay, so let me take you a little bit into history. And the idea is that it has been seen that while search ads were typically considered more relevant by consumers, and it's not a surprise to think why that was the case, because consumers were already in a state of mind where they're looking actively for a product through their search queries. And in that situations, when an ad comes up, the consumers find it to be much more relevant, right? But when consumers are consuming content on different websites, and at that time, if they see a display ad, well, their intent at that point of time may not be to actually look for a product or a service. And hence, the click-through rate on display ads were generally much lower than the click-through rate on search ads. And to some 2018 numbers, the click-through rate on display ads is about 0.1% in this year, as compared to the average click-through rate on search ads, which is about 2%. So you can see that there's an order of a magnitude difference in the click-through rate between the search ads and the display ads. Now, while there is this difference, right, still display ads are considered extremely important part of the advertising campaigns, because they have got a very wide reach, right? It makes it's possible for advertisers to reach out to consumers in their awareness phase, right? Even before they have actively started to search for a product or a service, maybe an advertiser can make an impression on these consumers through the display ads. So therefore, display ads are quite important, and they fit into a different piece of the puzzle of reaching out to consumers, as compared to search ads, right? So then the big challenge has always been to improve the click-through rates for display ads. And so the question is how to do that. And in the past, people actually tried different things. And one very interesting way to try to improve the click-through rate on display ads was to use obtrusive ads. And this is something that people even try today, although the usage of this kind of ads is on the decline. These are the kind of ads that kind of float up and over a particular website content area, and you cannot really consume the content because the ad has come and it has taken that place, right? It's kind of just floated up and obstructed your view. That's why the name obtrusive display ads. And many times now, as a person who is interested in reading the content, you get stuck, right? You have to somehow remove the ad from front of you so that you can consume the content. Now the problem there is that it is very hard sometimes to find that cross that will allow you to close the window for the display ad and then actually be able to see the content again. And sometimes even worse, there are two crosses out there, and one of those crosses is the actual cross to close the window, and that one is not very visible, and the other one is actually a fake one. And you click on that, and actually instead of closing that window, you are redirected to the advertiser site, right? So you might have had that experience. Well, this kind of advertising, of course, improve the click-through rate because you're kind of getting people to the advertiser site by hook or by crook, right? But that obviously would not bring in a happy customer to the advertiser site. It's very clear, right? And a lot of these people who may be coming through are just forced in that sense to come to the advertiser site, and they're not really interested, right? So that's kind of one drawback of this kind of approach. And even worse, consumers may actually start hating the brand because they were forced to come to the advertiser site when they were not really interested, right? So these kinds of approaches have been tried, and people have generally concluded that these approaches do not work. And the best approach that works well is, again, to do consumer targeting, and which, as we have already discussed, means that can we show our ads to the consumers at the right time of their consumer journey. So it again boils down to that basic principle, okay? So now let us look at what are the different kinds of targeting that make sense in the context of especially display ads, okay? So one of the first one that I'm going to talk about is called contextual targeting, and it is also sometimes called content-based targeting. And what it does is that it narrows the audience to a group of people with common interests. Okay, so let us say that you are a cruise company and you offer these cruise vacations. Okay, now if your ad, your display ad, is shown on a site that is devoted to content on travel and leisure, right? So the people who are going to be visiting such a site are very likely people who would be interested in your ad, because by choosing to visit this particular kind of a site, they have indicated that they are interested in this topic of travel, right? So your ad may actually be relatively more relevant to such people compared to if your ad had shown up on a site that is dedicated to finance, for example, right? So this is called contextual targeting. Put the ad of the advertiser only on website categories where you find some synergies between the type of the content and the nature of the ad, the nature of the product or the services that is being sold through that ad. Right. Now, you might ask the question that, yeah, this makes sense, but there are many general purpose websites out there, and they carry content in different areas. And so how is it possible for advertisers to show their ads on such a site? Well, for such sites, a variation of contextual advertising can be done, which is called keyword-based content targeting. And the idea is, just like as in search ads, the advertisers pre-select a set of keywords that indicate interest in the type of product or service that they are selling, right? Now, if a particular website has got pages, web pages that carry content that match with the keywords that the advertiser has selected, In that case, the advertiser's ad will become eligible to be shown on the web pages of such sites, right? So maybe your ad, an advertiser's ad can be shown only in certain web pages of a website where the keywords selected by the advertiser match up with the content on that page, right? So this is the idea of keyword-based content targeting, okay? Then moving on from this type of targeting, and another approach is profile targeting, which means that you select your audience based on some attributes such as demographics, right? So for example, men in their 40s, people who are married with children, etc., right? So you could do targeting on of this type. Or you could do targeting based on location, right? So you could target your ad to people who live in a particular area like Dallas, right? Or you could even target people based on their displayed interests, right? So, and this is very powerful because you are saying that, let us say that somebody is interested in travel or leisure, right? But currently they are not visiting a site which is relates to travel, and instead they are visiting a site that has got content specific to finance. But if somehow we could identify that these people had previously visited a website which is related to travel, that means that they have an interest in travel. A travel-related ad can be shown to only such people, even when they are visiting a website which has got content related to finance, right? So you're still targeting, in some sense, the right people based on their interests. So even this kind of targeting is possible. And then finally, we have what is called behavioral targeting, which says that you could target people who are in a specific state of mind, okay, in terms of their consumer journey, right? By identifying, by looking at their online behavior. And that is why you are able to send the right message to the right audience, right? So typically, your contextual or content targeting and the profile targeting is used to reach out to consumers who are in the awareness phase of their customer journey. The behavioral targeting allows advertisers to even reach out to consumers who are in their consideration phase or preference formation stage or the conversion phase of their customer journeys, right? So these are the three broad categories of targeting that make sense. And as I said before, they make a lot of sense in the context of display ads. But as we will see later, some of these kind of targetings can be done for search ads as well, right? Now, talking a little bit more about behavioral targeting, which is sometimes also called remarketing or retargeting. Okay, so the picture that you see on the slide actually explains how this works, and I'm pretty sure that in your own experience, you might have seen something like this happen to you. So let's start with the step number one. You see an internet user and who visits a site, right? And assume that this is a site of a potential advertiser. And then step number three, they leave that particular site. And step number four, they browse other websites on the internet. And the big deal here is that, based on the behavior that they displayed at step number two, right? As ads can be selected and shown to these users while they are consuming content on other websites out there in step number four, right? And this makes it really powerful because think about this: a consumer at step two may be visiting an e-commerce site and looking at the product page of a shoe, right? So they have indicated that they have some interest in this product. And now step number four, let's say they're reading a blog or a newspaper. And if the ad for the shoe that they had shown interest in previously, if that ad now comes up over there, it is likely that for at least for a good set of these consumers, this ad will attract their attention, right? So that's step number 5. And if they actually get you're able to get their attention, then it's possible that the consumer may now click through on the ad, revisit your website, and maybe even purchase from you. And of course, in step number 6, after purchasing, if they're happy with their purchase, they might even convert into being loyal consumers, right? So this kind of targeting, which is referred to as, as I said, remarketing, is typically used by advertisers to focus on consumers who are just about to convert, right? So imagine that somebody comes to your website, browses in different product categories, and carts an item, but did not complete the purchase. This guy is really this close to conversion because they have shown an intent to the extent of carting the item, right? But they did not complete their purchase. So if these consumers can be shown the ad of the item that they had carted, maybe the chances of conversion are fairly high. So this is a typical use of pre-marketing, but it is not necessary that only people who have carted the item can be targeted through remarketing. Actually, based on the behavior that people have displayed on the website of the advertiser, you can actually create segments of different types. So, assume that there's a set of consumers who have just come and visited the homepage of the advertiser and then left. So these people, you can say, are in the consideration phase of their journey because they're at least actively considering the advertiser's brand, and this they have indicated by visiting at least the homepage and spending some time on the advertiser's homepage, right? So you may want to target such kind of consumers. You can target consumers who have visited certain product pages, and they have really gone ahead of the homepage and gone to some product pages. So you can target those kind of consumers who are in their preference formation stage, right? And you can also target people who have already purchased from you. So these people are already engaged with your brand in some sense because they've already purchased something in the past from you. And now you can target these people again for doing some kind of upselling or cross-selling, which basically means that the advertiser can try to sell a related product, a product that is related to the one that they have already purchased, right? Now, one of the concerns that typically comes up is that when the same ad through remarketing shows up to a particular consumer again and again, there is a risk that that consumer may feel, get a feeling that I'm being stalked, and they may not like that. And actually, this can damage the image of the brand in such a consumer's mind. So how to avoid such a situation? And the answer to that is that such kind of advertising should be kept very relevant. And some ideas to keep it relevant is that, one, only target those consumers who have visited the advertiser's site relatively recently, right? If somebody came to your site 6 months ago and you are trying to target this consumer with a remarketing ad, maybe it is not very relevant to the consumer because such a long time has already passed, right? So keep it targeted to consumers who have visited your site in the last 1 month or 2 months, maybe even 3 months, right? But as you increase the length of the time frame in which the consumer had visited your site, you are taking an increasing risk that such a consumer may not find your ad to be relevant, okay? Another interesting idea is that of frequency capping. And what this means is that the same ad should not show up to a particular consumer more than a certain specific number of times in a day, right? So for example, in your advertising campaign, you can set it up in a way that the same ad should not show up to a consumer, let's say more than 3 times a day or 2 times a day, right? If a consumer is still not clicked through on your ad on this particular day, even though they got this exposure 3 times, well, take it easy. Maybe the consumer does not, is not in a frame of mind, or maybe they visited your product pages, but maybe decided not to buy your product, right? So avoid overexposure through frequency capping. So with that, we will end this part of the lecture.